Okay. Hello, America, and welcome back to the Game Addicted Show. Today, we're going to jump into a very special subject of SB 206. But before we do that, let's do our introduction. Hey, it's the Game Addicted Show. Welcome back. Nice to see you. Quick summary of our show. This is where we break down the VPI rankings, and if you haven't heard of VPI, it's because it's my little thing. I made it up. It's where I look at a team's strength of schedule, their total offense and defense of their opponents. We put it all together, put it in a little box, free shipping, straight to your home within 3 to 5 business days, and review teams according to what they've accomplished this season. But with that being said, let's jump into today's topic, SB 206. You've heard of it, maybe it's a fancy number, or maybe it has major implications when it comes to college football landscape. So in this segment, we're going to call it SB 206 Ranked. For the sake of time, I'm not going to go into all the details about SB 206 because I think there's plenty of news outlets already covering that in plenty of detail. But I will mention that I think there's a little bit of misrepresentation when it comes to some news outlets where they're kind of labeling this as, universities are going to have to lose a lot of money by putting players on salaries and this and that. And that's not what this bill does at all. To put it simply, it just gives players an opportunity to get compensation when using their likeness or image and video games and TV spots and other outlets. And there's obviously way more. That's an oversimplification, but for the purpose of this video, that's basically what it does. So what I want to talk about today is not so much of the breaking down the bill, but more of what happens now. Now, I didn't know this was signed today until I went to my Twitter account and I saw the Pac-12 release a statement. To oversimplify what they were saying, they're basically stating that they're really disappointed with this bill being passed. They're worried about the effect of how it's going to affect the Pac-12 conference and how it's going to affect women's sports. And put away your opinion on this matter, where you stand. But now that this bill is signed, let's see how it affects the Pac-12 directly. So for years, you've been hearing the slogan, Pac-12, Conference of Champions. The problem is the reason they're able to claim that is because of their 4 California schools. You have Stanford at number 1 with the most national championships of any team sport. Then you have UCLA. Then you have USC at number 3, followed by Cal all the way at number 10. And would you like to guess who's the 4th place team? It's Oklahoma State with 52 national championships, less than half of USC alone. Those 4 schools combined actually make up 385 national championships. Now, would you like to guess what the remaining of the Pac-12 has? Only 132 national championships. Now, that may sound like a lot, but when you consider that 8 teams can only equal a little over a third of what 4 teams make up, you have something to worry about if you were to lose these 4 schools or kick them out of the conference. I don't know what the plan is for the Pac-12, but those 4 schools have a lot of leverage. And let's not forget, this doesn't only affect the Pac-12. You even have the Mountain West, which sounds a little silly because I know they're not a Power 5 conference, but you do have Fresno State, San Diego State, you have San Jose State. Those schools will also be impacted by this bill. So what's the Pac-12 to do? Do they drop these schools and try to go pick up somebody else to add to their conference? If they drop those 4 schools, they are immediately dropped out of their Power 5 conferences. And they really risked losing any opportunity to make any major bowl games or contention for a playoff spot because, as history has shown, they've tried multiple attempts to try to get teams from the Big 12 over, only succeeding with Colorado. So the Pac-12 will only be shooting themselves in the foot if they try to go against these 4 schools. And if they were to include them, then that means they would now have to consider adopting this new bill for their states because they have to try to stay competitive. So now you're going to be spreading out to Washington, Arizona, Colorado, Utah, and Oregon as well. So now you have some momentum. And how does it affect the rest of the college football landscape? Will they start adapting? You have to consider that as well. Now, maybe the NCAA goes, you know what? We could do without those silly California schools. We could do without the Pac-12. We don't need them. We got plenty of leverage over here with the SEC and the ACC and all our big teams out here out east. So what's the NCAA to do? Are they to just move on and just focus on their East Coast schools, which, yes, they have a lot of history, but you have to remember that this goes beyond football. We're talking about other major sports like men's basketball, which UCLA is the epitome of men's basketball. Putting your feelings aside, UCLA has 11 national championships and the wizard himself, John Wooden, in their history books. So to lose that team, not to mention USC and their impact in college football, you're losing a lot from those two teams alone. And that's not to diminish what has been accomplished by Stanford and Cal, but the reality is UCLA and USC are the crown jewels of the Pac-12. Now, if you don't believe me, when it comes to the pool these two schools have, you have to remember when the Pac-12 was being formed, it was these two schools that were pushing to keep their weekend rivalry with Cal and Stanford afloat, which allowed them to play those schools every year. And that actually hurt the rest of the conference because that was 2 less games they were going to play against their teams in California, which is a very fertile recruiting ground on all major sports. And the next part to look at is the media market pool. I actually have some numbers here in front of me that I want to read out to you. So if you were to remove all 4 of those schools, and including the schools from the Mountain West, you'd be giving up the second largest media market of Los Angeles, number 8 with San Francisco, number 20 with Sacramento, number 29 with San Diego, and number 54 with Fresno. That's a lot of money you're going to be losing out on. And if you don't believe me on that, look at 2016 when UCLA signed a $280 million deal with Under Armour to take over all their products when it comes to their uniforms and product lines and everything. And UCLA, I love them, but have been struggling a lot. So why would Under Armour put that much money into this school? Marketing. It's a major media market, and money talks. They wouldn't put that much money into the school if they didn't believe they can get a major return on their investment. It was, at the time, and I don't know if this still stands, the largest deal has ever been made in college sports, and that should say something. So there we have it. Now, what are my thoughts on this? I think it's going to be a trickle-down effect. I think that the rest of the Pac-12 conference is going to have to comply because I don't think they can afford to lose those 4 major schools from the conferences. I think it makes it less viable for them to compete in the playoffs for college football, make it harder for them to compete in basketball because they will probably have a hard time getting teams into the tournament. And they lose out on all those national championships. They would no longer be able to claim that they're the conference of champions. Then if you have that trickle-down effect and it spreads out to all these states, then the NCAA starts losing a bunch of major markets. I mean, we're not talking about just San Francisco and California with Los Angeles. We're talking about the Denver market, the Portland market, the Seattle market, the Phoenix market. All those are major markets. And as my example with the Under Armour deal, money talks. And I think it's really going to have to force their hand. So I think the NCAA is in big trouble here. I personally support this. I think it's great for these players to get their proper representation and be able to be compensated appropriately. I myself have actually written many letters to UCLA fighting this because I don't think it's fair for them to take advantage of players in the way they do. But those are just my thoughts. Let me know down in the comments. Do you think this is great for the college sport? Do you think it's going to hurt all college athletics? Let me know what you think. I'm really curious about your insight on this. Okay, now that we're through with that, let's go into what everybody came here for, and that is our top 25 VPI rankings. Now, we took a lot of time speaking about SV206, so we're going to have to blow through a few of these. Here we are, top 25 VPI rankings, week 6. Clemson, what a tight one you were in there. So you actually stay at the number 4 spot this week. I know you dropped a spot in the AP rankings, but the beauty of this formula is that it doesn't really matter if you win a close game or win by a large margin. Ultimately, what's going to count is the wins and the production of the team that you play against. You're still in the top 4, looking for a strong playoff push. Don't freak out. I'm sure you're going to still keep climbing the polls. The darling of the VPI rankings, SMU. They have been in the top 25 every week since I started this ranking system. So what we're actually starting to see here is they just beat South Florida and they actually dropped a spot in the rankings. And what's going to start happening is that, yes, SMU had some huge victories to start off the season, especially against TCU. But as they get into the conference play, there's not a lot of strong teams that are waiting for them. They still have teams like Memphis, but as they continue to move along the season, this weaker strength of schedule is going to be hurting them, and you're going to see them slowly drop. SMU, just hang on, keep doing your thing, and I really would love to see you guys in the New Year's Six Bowl this year. If there was ever a team that needed to send a message, it was Ohio State, and boy did they. Nebraska just took a shellacking from the Buckeyes. Big Ten Conference still continues to be the best conference in college football, and Ohio State is showing us why. So with that huge win, I would like to say this should be number 1, but there just so happens to be a team who did just a little bit better. And for the second week in a row, it's never been done before, the Auburn Tigers returned to the number 1 spot. And boy, did they have a big win. Now, out there in the regular AP polls, Mississippi State isn't very well respected. But here at the VPI rankings, they've actually been in the top 25, I believe, all season. And they're a little underrated. So this was actually a really good quality win for Auburn, which has a brutal slate waiting for them in the SEC conference. So with this victory, it keeps Auburn as number 1. It puts them in a good position, I think, to make the playoffs still. I know that they're ranked currently number 7 in the AP polls, but I'm telling you guys, don't sleep on these Tigers. Those 4 teams we were talking about in the SEC last week, I think they're in huge trouble because they're coming. And that concludes another week of our VPI rankings. Let me know down below, what do you think of this week's rankings? Did I leave anybody out? Did I not give your team enough respect? Again, I'm at the mercy of the formula. I have no say in how these rankings play out. I just take the data, put it straight in, database spits this out. That's how it works. So, with this week's rankings, I'm really excited because I think we're seeing it match up closer and closer to the AP rankings in a slightly different order, which I think brings light to a lot of teams that maybe aren't getting the respect that they should be because they're being overlooked by traditional powerhouses. But as always, guys, I know I beg for this every week, but a like and subscribe would go a long way. So really appreciate that. But next week, we're going to be jumping into week 7 of the VPI rankings. So for a lot of teams, it's going to be the halfway point of the regular season. So I'm really excited to see how that plays out. But until then, thank you all, and I'll see you all next week. Goodbye.